And so let's talk about some of those historical facts in the Quran. Now, first of all, there is a story in the Quran about a great prophet of God called Noah. And this prophet is also, of course, mentioned in the Bible. And I'm sure you all know the story of Noah, how God sent Noah to his people, and the people of Noah refused to believe in him. And because of that, God sent upon them a flood. Now, before that flood, God told Noah to build an ark. Now, there's a few things about the story of Noah in the Quran. One of the things that's worth mentioning is in the 11th surah, or 11th chapter of the Quran, in the 44th ayah, the Quran mentions that the ark, that's the boat that Noah built, came to rest upon Mount Judi, Istawa Judi. Istawa came to rest upon the mountain of Judi. Now, the Quran is mentioning a specific name of the mountain where the Ark of Noah came to rest. And it's very interesting that recent archaeological research around the area of Mount Judi. In fact, there is a Mount Judi in Turkey, in present-day Turkey. And on this Mount Judi, there is a boat-shaped object with exactly the same dimensions as the Ark of Noah. Now, the Bible claims that the Ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, which is in fact 20 miles away from Mount Judi. And there's a few problems with the biblical description. The first problem is that the mountains of Ararat, or the Mount Ararat itself, is a relatively recent geological formation. If we look at the time scale when the Ark of Noah was supposed to be around, the Mount Ararat did not actually exist at that time. It is very recent geological formation. So that's one problem. And also the dates and the times offered in the Bible flood, and also the claim that in the Bible that the flood was a universal cataclysm, they don't fit the present-day archaeological and scientific findings. First of all, of course, in scientific terms, the idea that it could rain for 40 days and 40 nights constantly upon the Earth's surface is scientifically not viable. Of course, anyone could explain that by saying it was a miracle of God, it was an exception. Of course, we cannot argue that God has the ability and the power to do that. But what we are saying is that in scientific terms, for it to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, it's not possible. As anybody who knows how the water cycle works, the sun heats up the Earth's surface, heats up the sea, and the vapor from the sea is what is transformed into clouds, and the clouds are then transformed into rain. Now, of course, if it is cloudy all over the Earth's surface because of the rain, then how can the sun heat up the sea in order to produce more rain? All I'm pointing out here is that scientifically it's not viable. Also, there is simply enough water on this planet in order to raise the sea level so high that, as according to the Bible, every single mountain peak was covered. Since Everest is the highest mountain peak today, and it still was then, the amount of water that would be needed in order to raise the sea level above the level of Mount Everest is more than there is water on this planet in order to do that. Again, we're not denying that God could do it if he wants to. All we're saying is that in scientific terms, it's very difficult to verify such a claim that the Bible makes. However, the Quran does not claim that the flood of Noah was a universal worldwide cataclysm. In fact, the Quran clearly refers to the punishment that is bestowed upon Noah and his people as being something that is specific to Noah and his people. And so although we don't have any geological evidence for a universal cataclysm, we do of course have plenty of geological evidence for local cataclysmic floods. So this is very interesting that the Quran first of all accurately points out that the ark came to rest on Mount Judi, and it seems that there is a very, very high probability that the boat-shaped object, and surveys have been done of it, is the remnants of a massive bolt. And where is it found? On Mount Judi, as the Quran says. As for looking for the Ark on Mount Ararat, people have searched in vain for years and years and found nothing. The Bible describes a cataclysmic, universal, worldwide event, whereas the Quran describes it as a local event. Again, what we find here is that the Quran is in agreement with archaeological and scientific data. It's perfectly acceptable, and it's viable and verifiable according to that.
Ron and Bill agree that much progress has been made on Ron's first foray into the field. Due to the success of the trip and the strength of the discoveries made, Ron feels more strongly than ever that he is on the verge of a major breakthrough. As he reviews his data, the boat-shaped object continues to haunt him, as it has for the past 17 years. Then, unexpectedly, a most surprising and fortuitous event takes place.
My disappointment at having to wait on a permit for a later date was offset by an earthquake that happened in 1978 that did a much better job of excavating the boat than I could have done in maybe a year or 2 years hard work.
Ron is not prepared for the sight he's seeing. The earthquake has dropped the earth from around the sides of the remains, and the formation is now completely exposed. There, at 6,300 feet above sea level, in the mountains of Ararat, lies what appears to be the hull of a massive, ancient, man-made ship. The sides of the object are now clearly exposed, and the outline of the hull of a ship is now evident and clearly visible.
It simply dropped the earth away from the outside of the boat and left the rib timbers and other structures of the boat out there where you could see them. Also, there was a vertical split right down the center of the boat, which enabled me to measure the depth of the boat, plus get good, clean, fresh sample material out of there to have analyzed to tell us more about the chemical composition of the boat.
These two photos, post and pre-quake, give one an idea of the extent of nature's timely excavation job. The photo at left was taken in 1960 by the first party to examine the object. The photo at right was taken by Ron in 1979, shortly after the quake. It clearly shows the large quantities of earth which have been displaced from the sides of the object. Again, these two photos examine the object both post and pre-quake from yet another angle. In addition to this, the quake has cracked the object down the center, allowing Ron to take fresh samples of material for analysis. He also takes samples from around the object in order to compare the two for possible significant differences. Immediately upon Ron's return to the United States, he rushes the samples to Galbraith Labs of Knoxville, Tennessee for breakdown and analysis. The results are electrifying. Not only is there high carbon content, as in long decayed ancient wood, there are also traces of metal. Here are the first definite positive signs that the object is not just a natural phenomenon, but indeed may be man-made.
Soil samples have been taken from the formation on two different occasions, in 1979 and again in 1984. It's the 1979 samples that first gave the clue that there is a distinct difference in the amount of carbon in the formation as opposed to the field outside of the formation. I have the reports here, and if there was wood in this formation, that kind of a reading with 5% of carbon content would point to it. That's the kind of reading you would expect to get from the decayed wood.
Once we became aware that there were concentrations of metal in this boat formation that were associated with what appeared to be structural remains, the next obvious step was to investigate the site with the use of metal detectors. We set up a expedition with permit to go out with 4 types of metal detection equipment, and with this we carefully surveyed the boat, and we laid out tape, survey tape, on top of the ground or on top of the formation to indicate the position of the metal patterns in the boat.
Included in the expedition of Ron and 4 other specialists was Dr. John Baumgardner, a physicist from Los Alamos National Laboratories of Los Alamos, New Mexico. Using 3 types of sophisticated metal detection devices, they began to lay down colored survey ribbons in correlation with the metal detection readings on both the tops and sides of the boat-shaped object. Slowly, a pattern with regular features begins to emerge. The pattern reveals the form of a symmetrical internal subsurface structure of massive proportions.
In August of 1984, this is really the next new step in the study of this formation. You could call the year from August of 84 to August of 85 the year of the metal detector, because he took a metal detector over, went over the formation, and first of all, he got positive readings from his metal detector. Second, as he studied it more with his metal detector, the readings not only showed some readings, but it showed readings in patterns. Now, during that year, from August of 84 to August of 85, he and several other co-workers went over that formation with 3 different types of metal detectors, as I understand it. And the results with all 3 different types of metal detectors were consistent, and they did indeed give a pattern as they laid out strips, which show you some of the patterns that they got. Now, they also got crosswise patterns and in a lengthwise patterning, and this was first discovered with the metal detectors.
Since the negative and positive to these readings have been obtained using 4 different types of metal detectors, since one of these is species-specific in terms of the type of metal detected, since neither of these methods provides any positive readings for the field around the object, and since these positive readings can be correlated with visually observable features of the formation along the portion of one side of it, considerable confidence can be placed in the accuracy of these readings. Thus, the metallic distribution pattern of this formation, whatever it means, seems reasonably straightforward and clear.
Whatever is giving the positive readings on the metal detectors, presumably some type of metal, we're not sure what kind, would have to be patterned in the formation. And the question then is, why is it patterned in the formation? Well, let me just give you a hypothesis, a suggestion. If you had petrified wood in this formation, and the petrification takes place by a process of mineral elements flowing through the wood and depositing in them, then you would expect the trace readings that those minerals would give to follow the pattern of the decayed timbers and the petrified wood, petrification process. And so one possibility would be that this is a reflection of the petrification process of an original form, which would underlay this formation as it now stands.
When we did this metal detector evaluation of the boat formation, we covered the sides of the boat also, the area that had been left bare when the earth fell away during the earthquake, and the rib timber patterns and the keel or keelson patterns were very obvious there along the sides also. Now, another thing we did with these metal detectors, where we spotted high concentrations, say of iron, for example, we were able to collect a sample of 91% pure iron that showed preferential gradients under microscopic examination. And in our language, that meant that this had been hand-worked. It was a right-angled